celebrating 1 year of YouTube streaming. Wild, wild, wild time. Yes. Man, oh man, oh man. 1 year. February 22nd, 2025. Sat down and said, you know what? This is it. This is it. This is it. I am tired of putting it off. I'm tired of planning. I'm tired of trying to perfect the vision. It is time to share. And I sat down and I pressed record and I uploaded what came of that. And I've been doing that every month now, with the exception of 1 month. I skipped a month because life was lifing, as it does. And I'm going to talk about that today as I share with you my reflections from this journey thus far. It has been an enlightening year, an empowering year, an inspiring year, and an informative year. I've learned a lot. And the educator in me is going to share with you in the best way that I can the not the condensed, but the certainly clarified is probably the best word, because you can't condense the work, right? There is no skirting around, there is no shortcut, there is no escaping the work, right? Even as we continue to develop tools and have access to platforms that may make the work more efficient, more streamlined, more accessible, all those things, you still got to do it. There's no way around it. So I don't want to present as if I'm about to make this easy, but I am about to make this clearer for you. And on the journey in a year, this is, less about the practical stuff, right? Because so I'm on this journey of reinventing myself as a creative. And who knows, you may be reinventing yourself as a number of things, right? Um, and so when I'm thinking about becoming a creator, there's all these sort of guides online about like which camera to buy and your settings and some of the more practical stuff, which I think is helpful and useful. But my journey is more internal, right? And or at least that first sort of year was, and I do feel myself entering the more practical part of things. But even that, my reflections tend to be less about the steps and the tools and the settings and and it's really more about like, who am I becoming? What am I learning? How can I apply this? What does this mean for how I show up in the world and the impact I want to have and the art that I create and share? Like, that is really what my journey in this first year has been about, and how I tend to reflect on my experiences. So having done this before, having reinvented myself across several different seasons of life, right? From, you know, um, a personal trainer who used to own a fitness studio, and then I closed that down and I went back to grad school and I got my doctorate and I became a coach and then eventually a therapist, and did that work for several years. I'm still doing that work, right? Designing curriculum and educating on different platforms, and I'm still doing that. And I'm also now transitioning into a more creative version of myself, and I can feel how all of that experience is informing this new season of my life, and specifically how it shows up in my writing voice and what that means for the art I get to create and share in the world. And so, having done this process of reinventing myself several times, I had some ideas for the questions I needed to ask, and um, how it might feel, right? Not that I was trying to anticipate or compare the different seasons and the different transitions, but I do think that there are some universal truths that remain over and through and across time. And so I was able to tap into some of those and still be open to what this particular journey has to share with me. And so today is all about reflecting on this first year, as I've shared on YouTube openly and in real time what my journey to reinventing myself has been like. And I want to take a look back and reflect and celebrate this 1 year and acknowledge all the things that I've done and learned and achieved. But also, if there's one thing I have learned from reinventing myself time and time again, is that if we get too focused on the outcome and what it is we hope to achieve and accomplish, then we miss the milestones and we miss the moments and we miss the jewels along the journey. And so before we move forward, I do want to pause here. And as I mentioned, hitting that 1 year mark, taking on an opportunity to reflect and not only celebrate what I've created and what I've shared here, but also reflect on who I have become in the process. It is my belief that change happens on the level of who you are before it shows up in what you do. It has to happen at the level of your identity. So I really want to reflect on who I've become and some of the practices that help me really integrate that and solidify that, and some of the questions that help me to clarify that. And I want to offer some of that to you. So, one of the things I said on the very first episode of this series back in February of 2025 is, when we look into this space, we have a lot of cheerleaders who will encourage us and inspire us and tell us, you can do it, you got this, I believe in you, right? And we appreciate and love those voices. And we also have the coaches who are like, I've done it, let me show you how. And it's, buy my book, buy my course, all the things. And that's also wonderful. But what I have found and what inspired me to just start in real time, despite not necessarily being able to um, lay it out in the way that I saw it in my mind, the thing that inspired me to start is that we need teammates. We need people who are walking the journey with us in real time, who are asking the questions and facing the challenges and falling down and getting back up and doing all of that in real time with us so that we can see what it looks like. Sometimes when people tell their testimony of going through this season, it's polished in a way that can feel inspiring and validating, but not necessarily as helpful, right? Because we kind of need somebody who's in the trenches doing it with us, right? Who can answer the questions that we have in real time. So that was my intention for sitting down, pressing record, and sharing what came of this journey. And it is the messy middle, and it's not the sexy part, and it's not the polished, perfect product that is packaged and ready to go. But I still think that it's valuable. And that really has been the premise and the guiding light of continuing to show up in this space month after month and with reflection after reflection. And so, as I mentioned today, the intention is to reflect on that journey and share with you a clarified, not necessarily condensed, because again, you'll still have to put in the work, but a clarified and potentially more approachable guide. So I want to jump right in because um, I think this was the point, right? Like when I called it a how to, I really wanted it to be that. I really wanted it to be like a how to guide. One of the gifts that I know that I have, having done this so many times, and the way that I've moved through my life as a coach, both for sports, but also as a life coach and as a therapist, and as an educator, as a curriculum designer, like one of the things that I know I do well is take large concepts and break them down into actionable steps. And a lot of the times, what I have shared over the years has been what I have gone through in my own life and how I would walk somebody through it if I was given the chance to do so, or if somebody needed my guidance or support. And so that is what I kind of did. I kind of took a walked down memory lane and looked over the last year and watched the episodes and heard the reflections and remembered the moments. And I tracked down a couple of different questions and activities that I thought would be helpful for you along your journey. And I want to share that with you. So let's jump right in, shall we? We're going to go on this journey. There are what I'm calling layers, right? Because it's not really steps, because it's not a linear like step one, step two. It's going to go in order. But it really is layers that you're kind of peeling back and they're unfolding. And you might find that you're going to kind of wake up inside of different layers where you'll need different insights to continue to show up. And so I want to offer these as a way for you to sort of find a soft place to land wherever you may be on your journey of reinventing yourself, reimagining what's possible, and rewriting your story. So, the very first thing that I would say to you is clarify your values, right? Your values are your internal compass in a world full of noise and things that are calling you to do this and show up like that. And your values are your compass, right? And when you are reinventing yourself, you're going to have a lot of questions. How to do this, and what does that mean? Is that really necessary? And there's going to be a lot of that. And so, in order to avoid decision fatigue, having your values clear is going to help you to say, I don't even need to worry about that. I don't need to think about that. I don't need to focus on that. That's going to come later down the line. And it helps you to sort of take out and silence some of the noise and chatter that will come up, especially if you're looking online to someone like me or others who are on this journey or who have walked the journey and who might be sharing their insights. People will say things that will resonate, but not necessarily be relevant, right? Like, ooh, that sounds good, that makes sense, but does that really apply? And you can't answer the question about whether or not something applies to you unless you're clear about what matters to you. So that is part of what clarifying your values is all about. Um, because the truth is, reinvention without clarity leads to more confusion, right? You just start grasping at straws, whatever you see, whatever you find, whatever, feels like it makes sense. But if you don't have an internal compass that says, that's cool for you, but it's not really for me, right? Like, oh, that makes sense. And I see how you made that work for you. But given what I have access to, given what I know, given what my intention is, given what my vision is, given whatever, that maybe doesn't make sense. So if you skip the clarity step, you're going to invite more confusion into your process than is maybe necessary. So I highly encourage you to start by clarifying your values. And you'll see if you go back to that first episode of this series back in February of 2025, you'll see that I kind of said, as a creative person, what are my core values? Whatever I share, whatever I make, what are the checkpoints that I want to sort of measure this against? Not somebody else's work or not some expectation of what my work ought to be, but just what feels like the thing that is most true for me. And honesty is one of my creative core values. And so I highly encourage you to do that, because when you know what you stand for, you stop chasing things that don't matter to you. Right? So clarifying your values is going to be an incredibly important first step. The next thing I would encourage you to do is find your flow. Okay. Like, again, I recall I was thinking, you got to show up, you got to be consistent, you got to stay on the timeline, you got to make sure people know you and can find you and see you and you stay relevant, because people are flooded with so much information all the time coming their way. And it can feel, when you're creating, especially in a digital space, like relevance requires you to be constantly present. But because I am still, working on other things, and my life is very full at the moment, trying to be on the timeline every day or even every week just felt like pressure that was crushing me. And it was really discouraging, and sometimes would feel defeating to try to show up inside of this rhythm that just wasn't working for me. So what I had to do is give myself permission to step back and say, what's real? What can I actually do? How can I show up consistently? And making the distinction between consistency and frequency, right? Like, if I'm consistently showing up and what I offer, you know exactly what you're going to get. Um, and the content is, has continuity, right? No matter how much time happens in between, when that shows up, like, it, you know what you're getting. And I think about artists like a Kendrick, for instance, Kendrick Lamar, who is famous for taking multiple years between albums, right? 4, 5, 6 years sometimes between albums. And when he drops, people show up because they know they're going to get something good, right? They're going to get um, quality reps and the content and the flow and the themes and the all of those things are gonna show up. And so it's not about frequency, it's about consistency, and finding your flow is what allows you to show up in a way that is consistent so that you can deliver according to what it is that you say you want to offer, going back to the values that you define, right? So um, making sure that you have a rhythm that is not rigid, you're not containing and confining yourself, but you're saying, here's what I'm accountable to. Here is what allows me to show up in the way that feels most aligned with who I am and what I want to offer, but in a way that also keeps me connected to my audience or whomever you're serving with whatever it is you're doing, right? Your clients, your whomever. Flow happens when you stop forcing and you start feeling. So again, I was like, okay, I got to show up this frequently. I got to do this and da-da-da-da. But when I got into what it takes to show up, the editing and the c- living life to learn the lessons, to be able to glean the wisdom, to have something to share and reflect, the frequency of showing up every week was just, it didn't give me the space that I needed to really do that. And so I landed on once a month, and that felt much more approachable for me to be able to really give myself the space I needed to live in the process and then share my reflections honestly and in real time, right? So start being honest about how your process feels, and then decide, you know, how to build sort of your whatever that is, whatever the steps are, whatever the practices are, whatever the habits are, all that, start to build that around how it feels to be present in your process of reinventing yourself and becoming whatever next iteration of yourself is being revealed or is emerging and evolving, right? And so it is my practice, even beyond this process and just as a life practice, to really check in with my body, right? Because your body often knows before your mind can catch up, right? Like your mind is often trying to make sense of what your body is experiencing. It's processing it. What is that, right? So you have a sensation, your stomach is rumbling, and your mind will go, I think that means hunger, right? Or I think that means, oof, I don't, that food did not agree with me. Like your body experiences something and then your mind processes it and makes sense of it. And so the closer you can tap into your body sensations and how it feels, and if you're feeling tight and if your jaw is clenched and if you're stressed out and you're overwhelmed, like that might be a sign that the rhythm you've created doesn't quite work for your life. And where are there opportunities to reflect on and adapt that, right? So tune in to what energizes you and then create from there, right? Create whatever your flow is from there. And don't force yourself, right? Feel into your process and be honest about what it is you need and what it is that works best for you. Next, I would say set your intentions, right? This is about direction before destination. I think about this if we're talking about being on a journey of reinventing yourself, right? If you ever and even if you have an idea of what is coming and a vision for where you'll end up and all of those things, it's still a place you've not yet been to, right? Like this is a new season, this is a new version of you, this is a new iteration that you are integrating into your sense of self and your understanding of who you are and how you move through the world. And if it is a journey, like journeys now today, if I'm going somewhere I've never been, I'm probably gonna check the GPS, right? I want to know, sort of general directions I need to go in, right? I need to get a feel for what's the terrain, all these types of things. And so setting that intention and is again not necessarily about having the endpoint as the focus as much as it is embodying how you're choosing to show up to the journey with the understanding of what it is you're hoping to create or the impact you're wanting to have or the feeling you're calling into your life, right? And so this is about setting the tone and the direction. So again, not necessarily the destination of where you end up, but the direction of where you're headed, right? And the tone for what that journey can feel like. And this is again the once you sort of are in your flow, you're like, okay, if I know that this is what I am doing, how do I want that process to feel? And then how am I going about my days intentionally? How am I creating intentional habits and things like that? And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the later parts of this, as we continue to reflect. But really, it's about tone and direction. It's about motivation that feels grounded in truth that will sustain your action. So, again, when you're looking for a particular outcome, if you take action and you don't achieve that, that can suck the life out of your process. That can, again, discourage you from continuing to show up. And so, the less you can focus on that and you can tune in to like, what am I choosing to do here? And I can say that even having been on YouTube for a year, um, and views are inconsistent, people showing up or not showing up to the live streams, or even watching the playback, or leaving comments, or engaging with like any of those things, right? Any of those things, if I were to focus on, let's say, growing my audience, for instance, and that outcome was the thing I'm trying to do, well, every time I do a video and it doesn't perform well, that might be like, oh man, I don't want to do this anymore, I don't feel like blah blah blah. But because I'm focused on getting in my reps, showing up, learning the platform, finding my flow, my voice, my rhythm, and I'm really in this to practice showing up to the spaces and to build, a portfolio, if you will, of or a track record of, when I do start to produce the art that will come of this creative journey, the writings that I'm doing, and those things start to come out, then there will be evidence of the journey along the way. And for me, it's about documenting, and it's about showing up and practicing, and again, getting my reps in. And so, because I'm focused on that, I'm not necessarily discouraged by the number of people who show up or don't show up and engage or don't engage, or who shares or who doesn't, who follows, who subscribes. Those things are not of primary importance to me. There will be a time when I do get to focus on that, but right now, that's not where I am. That's not my intention for this season of my reinvention. So it's important to clarify that so that you don't start to focus on the wrong thing and then get discouraged before you even give yourself a real chance, right? So, um, inside of this, I'm learning the how, but really the why, right? Because I have this clear intention for why I'm showing up, then the how, as I've shifted from showing up every month with the edited video of this and that, to moving to a live stream format and learning this back end on this platform that I'm streaming from, and all the things, like the how is coming together because I'm clear about why, and the why is what drives me to keep showing up. So when you set your intentions and um you're clear about why this matters for whatever it is you're doing, whoever it is you're becoming, whatever is being revealed about what you get to be, do, and have, you're clear about why that matters to you. And again, this is why starting with your values is also important, because attaching your why, your motivation for showing up, to something that matters to you because it's important just as an overall core value, that kind of intentional living becomes your compass for change, right? And so when you decide what matters before you decide what you do, then what you do will be easier to show up to because it's connected to why you care, right? So that is, I think, the value and importance of setting your intentions, right? And deciding on your direction before you necessarily are focused on your destination. And I'm going to tell you, when you move like this, sometimes we can get paralyzed by perfection and then we never start. But when you move, when you clarify your values, when you find your flow and you define how you want to feel in your process and on your journey, and then you set your intention for the direction that you're heading in, not necessarily where you want to end up. When you do it that way, it is a little messy. It is a little messy, but this is where we give ourselves permission to be in process. Again, not being paralyzed by perfection, not having a rigid expectation of what the outcome will be, not being discouraged when your attempts don't necessarily lead to the outcomes that you hoped for or imagined or thought that they would. Like, when you just embrace that this is a messy process, I am learning, I am in progress, then it really does help do a few things. It helps you release the weight of shame, right? For not meeting the mark or feeling like you fall short or expecting that you should be somewhere that you're not, and all those things that can get in the way of you really showing up for yourself and for this vision, and for the truth that is emerging and really demanding to take the center stage of your life, like the truth of who you are, the truth of what you get to do, and all of that. Like when you get rid of the shame and the stories attached to what that's supposed to be and how it's supposed to look, and when you get rid of that and you embrace the fact that the messy middle is unavoidable, and as a matter of fact that it's actually often magical, because so much of what I'm doing now just has come from me being in it and gaining clarity from taking action, right? So this idea that you have control is an illusion, right? You think you know what your audience wants, you think you know what the art is supposed to be, you think you know all of those things, and the truth is you don't know any of those things, right? You only know the story that you're telling yourself in your mind about what those things are, but you don't really know. So that control is an illusion, and really it's about curiosity and compassion, right? Their curiosity, showing up, asking questions, being open, having compassion when it doesn't quite work out the way you thought it would or should, right? Forgiving yourself, giving yourself grace, all of those things. Curiosity and compassion are much better companions on the journey than control. Control can feel safe, right? Because it gives us sort of a sense that we know what to expect, because sometimes the unknown, the uncertainty is the part that scares us into paralysis of just never starting and never going, never pushing the button, and never, never publishing the thing, whatever that is, right? That's why so many of us have works in our drafts, right? Unfinished works that we haven't quite revisited because of the shame attached to it, because we're trying to control what it is and how people receive it or perceive it. Curiosity and compassion are your friend on this journey. So, really getting rid of all the stories about what it should be and really embracing what it is, and getting really comfortable in that space, because that is where the journey unfolds and the clarity about what's really possible and available becomes much more apparent. Because when you get too zeroed in and focused on a specific outcome, you miss the magic that happens around you that's showing you a possibility that you maybe could not have considered, right? I think about it like climbing a rock. If you've ever done rock climbing, if you stand at the bottom of the mountain and you know that your intention is to get to the top, maybe you plan, you're like, I'm going to put my foot right here, my hand right there, and I'm going to do this. And that all makes sense when you're standing at the bottom of the mountain. But once you get on the mountain and you realize, like, oh, that boulder's not as big as I thought it was, or I can't reach it in the way that I thought I'd be able to, or I don't have the leverage that I thought I would have to be able to push myself up. And so you have to sometimes make that lateral move or even go down and switch. You kind of, it's very all over the place, not linear at all. And so embracing that process, and not losing sight of, the direction that you're heading in, which is, in the case of climbing a mountain, you're heading up, right? But understanding that the path to getting there um, is going to be quite unpredictable, and embracing that process and opening yourself up to it and being willing to learn from and respond to the things that show up along the way. And so I would highly encourage you to embrace the mess and give yourself permission to be in process. And as you do that, the being becomes the doing, right? This is what informs your identity. This is what helps you to know what you're really made of, what you're really capable of, what really matters to you. Because maybe you got in there and you thought this was important, and then you're like, actually, it's not. It's not that deep. It's not that serious. I don't actually care that much about this. Maybe I thought I was supposed to care because somebody else told me I should, or somebody else said that this is what it was. But now that I'm in it for my process, for my experience, for my vision, for how I want to feel, for where I want to go, this isn't actually as important to me to do this. Again, when I first started, I wanted this, I had a very clear vision of visually how I wanted to present this, and the way that I wanted to share my ideas with the world. And the more I attempted to make what I'm doing fit into that, the less encouraged I was to keep going. But also, the urgency to share just kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And that created this sense of anxiety that is ultimately what did push me to just say, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep sitting on this. I can't keep stressing over this. I just need to go. I just need to go. I just need to do it. And it was, I know who I am. I know what I offer. I know what my gifts are. And I know, um, I trust myself to refine that throughout, and acting on that, believing in that, trusting that, leaning into that has evolved into so much. And a lot of it isn't even right. Like what I was trying to create visually isn't even what it ends up being when I think about what I'm actually preparing to share, which is more written than it is visual. So, just, this idea that focus on who you're becoming in the process and allow that to inform what it is you do, the actions you take, the habits you form, the environment you create, the relationships you attract and align with. Like, allow who you are being and what this process requires you to become, who this process requires you to become. Allow that to inform what you then do, right? Like, who you are shapes what you do. And an embodied identity fuels sustainable action. The more I believe a thing about who I am, the more I am inclined to do the actions that are consistently in alignment with that. So if I think of myself as a healthy person, then I'm going to make healthy choices in my food, in my activity, in my rest, in my hydration, in my thinking patterns, in what I consume in terms of like media. Like, I'm going, things that disrupt my health and well-being will not resonate, and I will not allow them, because if I have a belief about who I am, then that is going to inform how I show up, the choices I make, and ultimately what I do. So starting at the level of identity before action is what helps, right? Because reinvention is an internal shift. It's not just what people see out there and how people perceive you in the world, because that will be a part of it eventually. But it really is an internal shift. And again, I'm thinking about the time when I shifted from being a personal trainer and a fitness um, expert or professional to when I moved into coaching and therapy. And I remember for several years, and it actually still happens, even though the gym has been closed for 9 years now, which is, that's even crazy. But my fitness studio has been closed for 9 years now. I closed it in 2017. Um, and there are still people who are like, "Are you still training? You still working out?" And yes, I'm still working out. That's because I'm an athlete, and health and active living is a part of my identity. It's just, I'm gonna always do that. But I'm not training clients anymore as a personal trainer. And I remember for the first few years when I made that transition, and I would run into people who have known me for years and have known me as an athlete, who knew me as a trainer, who came to the studio and worked with me as a client. They'd be like, "Are you still training?" And I'd be like, "No, I'm doing this thing now." And it was so interesting because so many people would reflect back to me like, "Oh, yeah, that makes sense. I could see that." Right? So they saw in me the qualities that I had to do the work to really refine and amplify, and thinking about how I present to the world. So those things were always true about who I am, but it was about intentionally integrating them into what I do, which then is what helped to reshape people's perception of me. But the work was internal first, right? Like, I had to shift my focus and change my mind about who I am in the world, and then begin to live in a way that was a reflection of that, so that others can then perceive perceive that, whether they knew me or not, right? And so this is about letting your being lead and guide your doing and being in alignment, right? Because sometimes you want to make a change and it be get into hustle. I gotta do this, I gotta do that, I gotta rebrand, I gotta do this, do my website over, get my new headshots, gotta make this content, and all of those things, valuable, important, helpful, but are not sustainable if you don't believe it. If you don't believe that you are who you're projecting out into the world, the moment those things don't perform well and don't land in the right hands or create the outcomes you hope for, you're going to start to question and doubt your process. But when you are, internally, and you have conviction about, and you're in alignment with what you believe to be true about who you are and what you get to be, do, and have in the world, changes the whole experience, and it changes how you are able to show up to that experience. So super important to consider really focusing on your identity before you think about taking action. And once you have really clarified who you are and what it is, you have your intention, your direction, you're finding your flow. Once you start to build on all these things, you need to create a system. You need to create structures that serve you. Emphasis on structures that serve you. There's all these things about uh, your morning routine and the 10 things all successful people do. There's all these kind of articles and lists and suggestions, and again, from people who position themselves as coaches and leaders. And this is not at all about discrediting those things, but it's about you discerning which of those things actually lands and is relevant for you. So when you have a vision but you don't have structure, that leads to burnout, because again, you're just trying whatever. And I'm not necessarily mad at that, like throwing pasta at the wall to see what sticks. Again, I'm a fan of action breeds clarity. Show up, start, and let the journey start to shape itself. But again, this is why having that clarity of your direction and grounding in your values matters, because you're not just throwing any old thing at the wall. You're throwing things that are inspired by some truth about who you are, some clarity about where you're going, some conviction about what matters, right? So that's what you're trying out. And then you just try on things to see what sticks. But when you have a vision without any structure, you're going to get burnt out because you're just doing whatever, right? So systems create a sense of ease and consistency and sustainability, whether that's systems around, how you structure your days, whether that's systems around, how you move through your tasks, systems around, how you organize the various areas of your life. I like to call them buckets, right? Like I have my health and fitness and well-being, and then I have my creative practices, and then I have my professional development and personal development where I'm learning and growing and evolving. And, so I have these different buckets that are a part of what shapes me, who I am. And creating systems around, my morning time. I have my mind, body, spirit morning time reflections 360, right? I do something for my mind, something for my body, something for my spirit. I wake up in the morning, I prioritize that. That's what sets the tone for me throughout my day. And then whatever I'm doing that throughout that day, whether I'm designing curriculum or, I'm learning and studying, or I'm engaged in my practice of writing, and whatever I'm doing, waking up and starting with my mind, body, and spirit 360 sort of check in and nourishment is what sets the tone for that. And that's an anchor part of my systems, right? And that's what helps me to create ease throughout my day, because I create space in my mind to see how the day's going to flow. And then, sometimes things come in and disrupt that, but I have the space, the fluidity to respond in a way that is still helpful without feeling like, oh no, my whole thing is, kaput. So the thing about that is creating the right system that honors your energy, that honors your time, and that honors your goals, right? So if somebody's like, you got to be a morning person, and you're not, but you try to force yourself to be, how helpful is that really for you? right? Like, how helpful is that really for you? If somebody's like, you got to have a newsletter and create funnels and do all that, but that creates anxiety for you, and it doesn't work because you prefer a more warm and engaging type of connection with your audience, then how helpful is that really if you sit down and spend a whole lot of time learning how to do funnels and all this? Like, it's really about, again, you have to know who you are, you have to know where you're going, you have to know what matters most to you, and then create systems that reflect and align with that. Don't try to adopt other people's systems because they work for them. Doesn't mean you can't learn from and be inspired by other people's systems. It means maybe you try them on and you tell yourself the truth about, do they actually fit who I am or where I am? Because maybe they fit in a different season of your journey, but not right now. So maybe you tuck them away and come back to them later. All of these things are about that internal practice of really getting into, like, what is this for me? And all of this is about setting the stage and building the foundation for you to be consistent with what you're doing, right? Because no matter what you're doing, no matter who you're becoming, um, without consistency, you will fall short. You will fall short because we likely, when we are not consistent, we often give up before we can manifest the vision, right? And so setting up systems helps us be consistent because it helps us to develop the habits, and behaviors and the mindsets, that make it easier for us to show up, lessen the friction, right? So, the right system is really about supporting who you're becoming, not just what you're trying to do. Not just, I'm trying to do this, so I need a system that's going to help me do the thing. The system is supporting who you are becoming. Because if you do need to adopt new habits, you need to create systems that are going to help support those habits, make it easier for you to engage in those habits. And that is about, again, that identity piece before the action piece, right? And then I would also encourage you, once you've sort of done these things, to test the water, because small steps are still steps. Small steps are still steps. So test the waters, try it out, right? Sometimes we think reinvention requires us to just overhaul our whole lives, just uproot everything, flip the desk, turn it over, and start from scratch. And it doesn't. It doesn't have to do all in all the time out the gate, right? Like, start with micro experiences or experiments, right? Like, try something out for a day or two, for a week, for a month. Give yourself a bite-sized thing. Let me try this and change this one thing at a time for a short amount of time to test it out, see how it feels, make adjustments, right? Learn. Again, this is about, how am I building in the things that are going to help me show up consistently and be sustainable across time? Because whatever you're doing, it will take time. So if you don't set yourself up to be able to take small steps consistently over time until you can start to see manageable and sustainable change, then you're kind of defeating yourself from the beginning, right? So testing the waters is about micro experiments. And again, that coming back to that curiosity piece, being open, being curious, what would help me do this? What do I need to know? Who do I need to know? Where do I need to be? What kind of space, what kind of information, what kind of tools, what kind of skills, whatever. What are those things? Asking those questions. Because sometimes we're waiting to feel clear and confident to go. And really, that doesn't come until you start, you get in it, you learn, you adjust, and you adapt, and you make it make sense for where you are so that you can feel clear and confident in continuing to show up. So if you're waiting at the door for something to feel clear and confident before you take a step into the next room or to the next season of your life, you're going to be waiting there. So you got to let the curiosity about what is in this next season, what is possible, what is available, what you do get to be, do, and have. You got to let the curiosity lead you into the room and allow you to cross that threshold, and in the lived experience of taking action and trusting yourself and testing the waters, even if it's in a small micro way. That's what leads to the confidence that then, builds over time, because then you have evidence, right? The curiosity when you lean into it and you trust yourself to navigate things and you give yourself permission, right? This is going back to that piece about it will feel messy, right? So you give yourself permission to be in that mess while you figure it out, adapt, adjust, edit as you go. That then is how you build the trust and confidence in yourself that you can do it. And then the more you do that, each time you level up or each time you enter a new room or a new season or a new iteration of yourself, you have that sort of what I call gold nuggets of the history of times where you've done it in the past. And it was hard and it was messy and it was scary and it was lonely and it was painful and it was all the things that it was, but it was also beautiful and it was also um, enlightening and inspiring and all those other things as well. And that is what you carry with you throughout the seasons to continue to show up and build that confidence muscle, right? So you learn by doing. You don't learn by continuing to refine and perfect the plan over and over and over and over and over again. You learn by launching. And then you edit as you go. Start small, stay the course, and let your lived experience refine your next steps. So, those are sort of the steps that I want to kind of share with you. Now, here is the fun part because, again, as I said, I spent a lot of time in my life as a coach, as a therapist, as a teacher, as an educator, and somehow, some way, using my own journey and the wisdom that I gleaned from being present on this journey and offering that as something that other people can learn from, excuse me, and practice. So this time is no different. I want to share with you the workbook that I've created, right? So I've offered the insights into what my journey has been like, but I want to share with you a workbook that I created for you to engage in your own process. Because I came to all of this awareness by being in my process, by showing up, sharing on this platform, YouTube, and really being present inside of this experience. And there were questions that I asked myself and practices that I engaged in and habits that I formed that really allowed me to embrace and embody this new creative identity. And so I want to share that with you because I don't know who you're becoming. I don't know your vision. I don't know um, what it is you hope to be, do, and have in the world. But I do know that when you have a guide, when you have um, structure or systems or guardrails in place, that it can create a sense of safety on that journey that allows us to keep showing up, that allows us to trust ourselves to keep going, that gives us sort of those breadcrumbs to come back to when we sometimes feel lost or unsure or uncertain, which happens a lot on the journey. So I want to share this workbook that I have created. Hold on, actually, because maybe it will be easier if I share like this. Oh, maybe not. Okay, so let me do this then. I'm going to share. So, this is the workbook. It's Becoming, a workbook for reinvention. It's a guided journey through the beautiful mess of becoming more of who you've always been. So, let me make sure you guys can see this. Okay, so might be kind of small, but that's okay. Let's just go through it. So there's an opening letter, right? That's to you, the reader. Um, Hold on, I want to make sure that y'all can see this. So give me a second because this feels maybe like maybe this is a better way to do it. I want to make sure y'all can see it. No, it's the same thing. Okay, well, we we move. Oh, actually, here we go. Maybe this is better. Ah, found it. Okay. See, learning in real time, right? Learning in real time how to use this to maximize the experience for everybody. So, this is the welcome and opening letter. I'm just going to run through this very quickly because I really want you to get this for yourself and spend some time with it. But this is so the first one, as we talked about, clarifying your values. There's a blurb in here, and inside of that, there's some reflections, right? So there's a resentment clue. There's thinking of a time where you felt resentment or frustration. What value was being violated in that moment? This is going to help you clarify your values, what matters most to you, right? Reflecting on peak moments, 3 moments in your life when you felt most alive, most proud, or most at peace. Reflecting on what was happening, who were you with, what were you doing, right? These is looking for the threads that help us to connect, because sometimes when we're reinventing ourselves, it's because we know we need to, not because we're necessarily clear about what is next. And so this can help us to really kind of pull in some of the lived experience that we always have, that we already have. This is certainly something that I did when I was closing my fitness studio. That was a moment where I was growing out of that version of myself, but not necessarily clear about what the next version was going to be. So reflecting on what was nourishing and what brought me joy really helped me to clarify what my next moves could look like to create a life that felt good and that was fulfilling. And then again, this is about auditing your values, right? Reviewing your calendar and your coins. I always say, if you really want to know what matters to you, check your calendar and check your coins. Where you spend your time and where you spend your money is going to tell you what matters most to you. And this is not about judgment, this is about awareness. This is going to tell you the truth about what really matters. And if the things that you're spending your time and money on are not the things you want to be focused on and you want to shift your attention, energy, and focus, this will help you really clarify that in a meaningful way. And so these are the types of reflections and activities you'll find in the clarifying your values section. In the finding your flow section, there's an energy map, right, where you take a full week to track your energy levels. Every 2 hours on a scale of 1 to 10, note what you're doing, who you're with, how it feels. Do you feel drained? Do you feel energized? What is it doing? How is it supporting you, right? And so this is about developing your self-awareness, seeing, again, I know I'm a morning person, so I know how to organize my tasks throughout a day such that I'm getting the most out of my time by maximizing what tasks I do at what time of day, because I know what energy I'm going to bring to that table and what that task requires of me. So being able to maximize that is really helpful in finding my flow. But that started with me really building my awareness of who I am and how I feel throughout the day, right? Write down every activity, paid or unpaid, big or small, that has ever made you lose track of time. When are you in your flow? When are you feeling like I could stay up all night and do this and I could do this for free and I don't care what's going on? What are those things that you're doing? And where are the opportunities to do more of that, right? And then developing a relationship with your body where you check in and feel, right? Like, ugh, when I know I got to sit down and send invoices and go through my finances and do all that, like, I don't love it. So I've had to create an environment where that process feels better, because otherwise I won't do it because I'll be avoiding the feeling. I'll be avoiding the heaviness and the dread and the dread of doing that, as opposed to I put my playlist on, I light my incense, I get it going, and I create an environment that helps me feel better about that in my body so that I actually get these things done. So these are the types of activities, right? Setting your intentions. This is about writing a wise statement, writing a letter as your future self to your current self, right? The version of you that is fully fulfilled inside the vision that you have for where you're headed, writing a letter as that version of yourself to your current self, right? Setting a daily intention practice each morning or for a week, right? Like really checking in around how am I being intentional for carving out space to embody the practices and habits of the version of myself that I am walking into, right? And really setting that as a daily intentional practice. And then also, creating a priority filter. This is going back to how am I making sure that I'm making decisions that are in alignment with my values? And what are the questions I'm asking myself to filter out that stuff that doesn't matter, so I'm not spending a lot of time burning myself out on things that are not relevant or helpful or useful to me, right? So this is the embracing the mess This is the embracing the mess section of the workbook. Each section again comes with just sort of a brief explanation or context for what is happening in this phase or in this layer, and then some embodied activities and reflections that will help you clarify what is true and real for you in the moment. So that starts with naming the mess, right? Just writing for 10 minutes without stopping, about what feels like the hardest piece or the hardest part of reinventing yourself, right? This is not about editing yourself or judging yourself or fixing yourself or changing yourself. This is just about naming it, becoming aware, and allowing that thing to come up. And then auditing it. This is where you sort of, okay, when I'm seeing this, what's the story I'm telling myself? Where is this coming from? Who told me this? And what would it look like for me to look at this same thing, but with less shame and more grace? Right? With less judgment and expectations and just more truth about what it actually is. And then also list 10 ways that you have already grown in the last year. Because again, often it is not about necessarily becoming something new as much as it is about being more of who you've already been, right? Like, as I mentioned before, when I transitioned from personal trainer and gym owner to coach and therapist, so much of how I was showing up in the space of a therapist, the questions I was asking, and the way that people felt in my presence was also there when I was a trainer. And many folks, as I was closing the studio and letting my clients know and letting them know, this is where I'm headed, many of them said to me, "Oh, that's why I come to you," right? Like, there's so many trainers in LA I could come to, but I come to you because you bring this thing. And it was really a beautiful thing to celebrate, really leaning into that even more and letting that part of myself lead the conversation of my life. So giving yourself credit for the growth that you've already experienced, and allowing that to be the fuel that inspires you to keep going, even when you're facing and embracing the messy parts of the journey. Right? This is where being becomes doing, as we talked about, right? Like creating an identity statement that is, I am someone who, right? Like, I am a person who does this, right? The version of myself that I'm becoming, the version of myself that's being revealed, the version of myself that I'm evolving into, I do this. I show up like this. I read these books. I navigate these spaces. I dress like this. Like, there's all these things that will help you really sort of, um, clarify with and for yourself the statement that you're making about who you are, right? And this is about creating present tense, not I will be, not I want to be, I am, right? That's important. Choose one day of the week where you act entirely as the reinvented version of yourself. I cannot tell you how valuable that practice has been, where I just set aside a day where it was all about the creative flow. So I didn't try to force it to be something. I didn't try to make myself, you got to write a chapter or write it. It wasn't that. It was just like, what do I feel inspired to create? Maybe I draw, maybe I doodle, maybe I dance, maybe there's all kinds of things. Maybe I, hum a tune and make a song. Like, it was just about being in the energy of someone who creates and setting aside a day where that was all I did. I lived as a person who's just living from their creative, inspired self. And that helped me really shape what is ultimately becoming the writing that I'm still not sure what the writing even is, right? But like, that practice is what helped me know that writing was one of the vehicles. And now that I'm in the writing practice, I have several pieces that are still not quite sure what they are. Are they a book? Are they a blog? Are they a series of essays? Like, what is this? I don't know. But continuing to show up to the practice is helping me refine that, right? Write down 3 beliefs that you have that are currently holding you back and getting in the way of you taking the next steps. This is about uncovering those limiting beliefs and giving yourself permission to confront them. And again, not with judgment, but with curiosity. And then describe your reinvented self in 3 dimensions. How do you feel internally? How do others experience you? And then what are you creating or contributing as this version of yourself, right? So, all of these are exercises that you can do that will help to move your process along in a much more meaningful and embodied way. When you're talking about setting up systems, you're auditing your current systems. Are they working? What's not? What edits could I make, right? So that's one thing. Then you're going to design a system, designing a week. Okay, and a perfect week, what's the flow? What does that look like? How do I want to spend my time? How am I setting aside time to make sure that I'm investing in the new self, even as I balance my current self and stay present for the responsibilities and obligations that I've already said yes to, right? Like, how am I creating space to really integrate this new self that is emerging? And then what is one thing? What is one new system that you can implement this month, right? It could be a new system around your finances, a new system around, you know, how you navigate your relationships, a new system around literally whatever feels relevant for where you are in your journey and what it is you're doing. Creating one system that's going to help you structure how you approach this thing, right? And there's a system starter kit that's really helpful. That's about like your anchor habits, how to time block, designing your environment to support what it is you're doing. The space that you see me sitting in right now, I had to create that, recognizing that if I wanted to show up and share in this space consistently, I needed to have a dedicated space where I could sit down, turn my camera on, and feel comfortable recording. Without having to rearrange everything and set up a bunch of stuff. Like, this station is always set up, and the moment I want to just record something, it's just like sit down, press play, go. And it's all set up, and I'm still refining it, right? Like, there's still things, there's art I want to put up, there's things, but it's here, and it lowers the friction between um me showing up to share in this space, right? Weekly reviews, grace protocols for when you fall short, because you will, because that's just part of it, because you're learning and it's messy. And I'm going to keep saying that because that is, I think, the hardest truth that most of us have a difficult time navigating. And those are the moments that cause most of us to question or quit, when it gets messy and we feel like, oh no. And that was also why it was important for me to show the process in real time, because when we see other people's messiness, it validates our own, and it doesn't cause us to question or doubt what's coming up, right? When we're in our own mess. So grace protocols help you decide right now how you're going to care for yourself in the moments where you fall short. So those are some of the systems. And then again, testing the water, designing it, doing it, and then debriefing it, right? So once you set up your systems, you say, this is what I'm going to do. Okay, you know what? I did it. Didn't quite work for these reasons. I'm going to make these edits. And that's what you're doing in the debrief. So then you redesign it, and then you do it again, and you continue to do that, right? And you're doing that with your flow and your intentions and all of that is being integrated. Your values, all of that is you're taking into consideration when you're designing, doing, and then debriefing your systems and your flow and your process. And you just keep doing that. And the more you do it, again, this is you learning. This is you kind of showing up as the version of yourself that is really embodying all the things that you see. So that is it. And then, of course, just walks you through just kind of a cohesive way to think about the layers that we're going through. There's a snapshot, some prompts that you can take, and some journaling that I'm inviting you to do. Again, this is about really being intentional about setting aside the time to nurture and invest in the version of you that is emerging, creating room for them, reassuring them, and really integrating that part of you into how you move through the world in real time. And then, of course, there's a closing letter and some homework that you can just continue to do, because this is an ongoing process. I've been in my journey for a year, and I'm just now getting to the point of um, feeling like I'm ready to share something, right? Like, so much of what I've been sharing thus far has just been reflections on the process of becoming. And now I'm starting to have a product to share, right? Like I'm writing things that will eventually become something. And I'm just now getting to the point where I actually have something to um, offer in terms of a product or a finished experiential thing versus just my reflections. And so taking the time to really be in this process, to really honor what it means to become a new version of yourself is really what this is all about. So that workbook is available for download on my website. I probably need to update the caption to this, so I will do that so you can have the direct link to purchase that. And in the meantime, I want to encourage you how to reinvent yourself as a result of showing up to this space and getting more familiar with what I want to share and how I want to share and what this space gets to be. Uh, how to reinvent yourself is really one of several things that are showing up, right? Like, as I'm just sharing with you my reflections on 1 year, we know that wisdom isn't just knowledge, but it is knowledge applied. And so, what I have learned about how I want to show up in this particular space when it comes to YouTube, right? So, apart from the writing that is coming forward, when I think about reinventing myself as a creative, I understand that I write, I am a writer. And so, doing that, but in terms of how I share and show up here in this space, how to Reinvent Yourself is just one of several series that feel relevant to me that I'm offering and sharing here. And so, if this is about wrapping up sort of reflections on the journey, and now I'm giving you glimpses into the journey, you would have seen if you're following the series back in January, I did an episode on unpacking my obsession with Ryan Coogler, and that was really a part of my creative sources sub series. So it's like how to reinvent yourself. I'm sharing my creative sources. These are the people, places, um, and art, right? People, places, the art, the artists, the ideas, the things that are inspiring me, muses, things that I look to study and dissect for my own learning and my own understanding. And I really deeply appreciate Ryan Coogler's approach to storytelling and all of those things. And so I've been studying him, but there will be more of that in the How to Reinvent Yourself subseries. I'm also going to be doing a subseries as part of How to Reinvent Yourself that's called Show Your Work. And this is where I'll be sharing snippets and sneak peeks of what I'm working on. So I might do readings of some of my writings. I want to learn things like how to sew. I'll probably, do things like that. So just again, creating space for my creative self to be nourished through curiosity, through trying things, through taking action and refining my practices in ways that support the vision and the direction that I'm going in. So in addition to How to Reinvent Yourself, there is Seen and Known, which is an intimate conversation series exploring the intersection between visibility and vulnerability. And this is in the age where we're readily seen, right? Like people can see me, they can show up, watch these streams, follow me on social, they can see me, but they don't necessarily know me. And part of that is, it's because we choose what we share, right? And that shapes people's experience and perception. And so this is about that intersection. I think this is especially important for artists and creatives because it is my belief that you can appreciate art more deeply um, when you understand the artist who creates it, and you have more context for who they are um, and how they think and move through the world. So that is another series, Seen and Known. We're 2 episodes in, and I've had some beautiful conversations with friends about, the ugly part of creating and sharing and showing up and being seen, and the uncertainty and the fear that can be a part of that process of really being known, the vulnerability of that, and also the questions we ask ourselves about what informs how we share, right? Again, in this age of algorithms and analytics, where your audience has a say so in what you create and share, how much does that influence, your own process? And how are you deciding how much you allow it to inform what you create? So That is what Seen and Known is about. And then there's Daydreaming Out Loud, which is a space for collective imagination where we get to practice living in the world that we're still co creating, right? So recognizing that, there are things that are happening that are outside of our control. But control is different from agency, right? Agency is about how I show up to and respond to what is happening and what I choose to create as a result of that based on what I have access to. And agency is about activating those things. How am I responding to what is happening? And how am I choosing to create based on what I have despite what is happening? And daydreaming is a space where it's a practice where I allow myself to see what is possible and to step outside of the realm of the limitations that can often be thrust upon us when we see what's going on. Um, and it's just to say, like, okay, and so now what, right? Like how do we reimagine what is possible and then give ourselves permission to step into the realm of creating that? And daydreaming is a practice that I use for that. And I'm sharing that with all of you. And every month we explore different themes. So far, we've explored freedom, we've explored finding safety and connection, and we've explored what it means to embrace the unknown. And we'll continue to explore different themes, but it's just coming together in a collective space to use our imagination, to really call in what it is that we hope to see and experience in this world. So that is where you can find me. I hope that this has been helpful. Thank you again for being on this journey with me. We are 1 year into this, and I would love for you to continue to join me on this journey. So you can find me on social. I'm mostly on Instagram. I dabble in threads every now and again. Of course, here on YouTube at Hey Dr. Joy, or you can text Hey Dr. Joy to 323-629-8508 to join our community and get direct updates about when I'm going to be going live and what other things I'm going to be doing, live events in person. There's all kinds of things that I have going on. And so follow me there. Stay tuned for that. And just as a reminder, reinvention is not just about mastering your craft. It's so much more than that, right? It's about understanding yourself. It's about, your patterns, your fears, your strengths. It's really this process of the way you approach discomfort and the way you respond to growth. And if we never pause, if we never reflect on what we've learned, and if we miss the opportunity to glean that wisdom, then we can't embody it. So I hope that this was as nourishing for you as it was for me, and that you'll revisit this episode, that you'll share this episode, that you'll download the workbook, that you'll do the workbook, and that you'll engage in the practices that will really help you in reinventing yourself. So thank you so much for joining. Tune in, tell a friend, share, watch again, download the workbook, and let's keep creating. Until next time, cheers.